Okay, great. Looks like we've got a global crowd here. Very exciting. Got some people from all over the US, Norway, Canada, India, Germany. So very exciting. Happy that you guys have joined us today. We are going to be talking about our latest webinar here, Case and Knowledge Management, the what, why, and how of deployment. Just a few housekeeping rules as we get started this morning. Please stay on mute. There will be a Q&A session after the presentation today. So please feel free to use that Q&A feature to ask questions throughout that session. And also, as you're asking questions in there, please feel free to add your name and maybe your organization so we understand who you are and can better support you. This session is being recorded, and once the session is complete, we will be posting it both on the community, and you will also see it on the YouTube channel. We'll also post the slides there, since there are some links that you may want to have access to after the session. And then once the session ends today, you'll have a short survey that we'd love for you to fill out and give us some feedback on what was helpful, what information you'd like to see in the future. We really take that information to heart and use that to help plan future sessions. So thank you guys for joining us again today. Just wanted to introduce your hosts this morning. My name is Stacy Prezell, and I am the Principal Portfolio Manager in the Leading Practices team here at ServiceNow. I've been here for about a year, but have about 10 years of experience on the platform. Prior to joining ServiceNow, I was in the partner ecosystem, working with customers to help them with their implementations. With me today, I've got Sandeep and Ian. Sandeep, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Sandeep Tandon. I'm a Principal Solution Architect at ServiceNow. I've been at ServiceNow for about 4 years, working in our employee workflows part of the business. And I've been in the industry for about 25 years, working both as a consultant and as part of large global business service organizations. So look forward to the discussion today. I'll move it to Ian.
Thanks, Sandeep. My name is Ian Posnick. I'm also a solution architect here on the employee workflows team. My background is been a technical consultant in the HR space for the past 5.5 years or so, and I've worked previously within the HR industry. So I look forward to our talk today.
Great, guys. Thank you. So happy to have you here with me as well as we go through this webinar. Today's session, everyone, is a part of the Live on ServiceNow series, which is a curated event series to connect you with ServiceNow experts and peers that can help you with deploy your products faster and achieve that value quicker. Join us next month for a roundtable discussion with experts and peers to discuss and answer your questions about activating and configuring case and knowledge management. And we'll be posting that link in the chat so you can check out the upcoming events. Sorry about that. And I see some familiar names in the attendee list today. We did have a session last month that I saw a few of you joined. For those of you that may have missed last month's session, it is available now on demand. So you can get that overview of some of the features and capabilities that we covered in HR Case and Knowledge that you can deploy, tips on how to plan that implementation. And also Ian gave a really great demo around some configurations, step-by-step guidance to help you as you launch some of those capabilities. So again, that information is available on the community channel as well as the YouTube channel. And we'll be posting that link in the chat as well so that you all can access that pretty easily. All right, so let's get started. Our agenda today, during last month's webinar, we asked the attendees what you wanted to hear about next, and the overwhelming response that we received was around service automation for cases, as well as some of the integrations for HR case management. So we're going to talk a little bit about those topics today. And in today's session, we're going to share an overview of the features that are available to help you with some of that service automation. We're also going to look at some of the capabilities and features that can help you as you plan through those steps. We'll take a deep dive into the integrations that are available for you to show you what different things are available on the store and how to kind of plan for that integration as you're going forward. And then Ian's going to walk us through configuring some of those features to show you how they can be set up within your instance. And then we'll wrap up today with some key takeaways, as well as provide you with some information about resources that will be available to you to help you plan your next steps. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Sandeep to talk about case automation.
Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, you can just move to the next slide. So welcome everyone again. Let's talk about automating HR cases and tasks. So why is it important to do this kind of automation around your HR services or HR cases within your organization? As we've all seen in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of increased focus on employee experience. And a lot of companies are trying to figure out ways to improve the employee experience, so much so that I think a lot of companies have specific roles, just focused on employee experience leader or employee experience manager, whose sole job is to look at all their internal processes within the organization and figure out ways to improve the employee experience. So a little bit of what happened in the consumer industry from a consumer experience perspective is what's happening on the employee experience side within organizations, because end of the day, they are the consumer of services for the organization. And all of this has got a fair amount of strategic intent also. I mean, if you look at the quote on your screen, employees dissatisfied with workplace technology are 2 times more likely to look for new positions externally. So from Gartner, based on their research. So clearly there is a sort of a strategic objective to try and do automation to improve the employee experience. Let's move on to the next slide, Stacey, thanks. And some of the other benefits, that automation will bring across to us are increase in HR productivity. So if we are able to automate the work, obviously we'll do more with less and do it faster. Reduce errors and compliance issues. So the chances for manual errors go down. We just need to configure the process once in the system and hopefully it works well after that. Compliance is something that organizations sometimes struggle with, and you could actually build in your compliance into your processes. I mean, if I was to take an example of processes related to finance or compensation within HR, you want things like, checker and reviewer process or another set of eyeballs to look at the work. And then you need to keep that record for your audit within the organization. So your automation through case management can help you track all that into your workflow. So with increased productivity and reduced errors, it improves the service delivery. And of course, improved service delivery leads to a better employee experience. So clearly the case, in terms of what we are proposing here from an automation perspective for your HR services. Stacey, move to the next slide. So ServiceNow provides you a whole arsenal of tools to be able to do automation around case management. Now, during the course of the discussion, I'll also use HR services and HR case interchangeably. The rationale for that being that HR service is what we configure in ServiceNow. And every time a user or a requester invokes that service, it results in the creation of a case. And then that case follows its logical conclusion in terms of the workflow that we have configured for that service, right? So I may use the two interchangeably. So as I shared, that ServiceNow provides you a whole arsenal of tools, whether it is in terms of tasks that you can build into your case management workflow, or approvals, or even under the child cases, under a parent case to resolve the query or the transaction at hand. There are some additional features which are also available, and we'll talk briefly about those also, like fulfillment instructions, document templates, etc. We can move to the next slide. Thanks. Yeah. So before we get a little bit more deeper into the options available to you for automation, we thought it'd be good to just get a sense in terms of how you feel about the level of automation in your service delivery operations. And we provided you 4 choices. You could read through them, but fundamentally it's, if you are really at a sort of a starting point and doing manual or service activities, or the second option is if you have advanced a little bit more and doing complex activities and lifecycle events. And third is that you're really leading the way in terms of automation and you've achieved a lot. And the fourth option is, of course, maybe you are just looking for guidance to move up that maturity curve. So do provide us your responses. If the poll is on your screen right now.
Is the poll launching for everyone? There it goes.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So while you answer, the poll is kind of useful for us also because these sessions are not just one-way traffic. We learn from you also. Some of our customers have really done great stuff with their ServiceNow implementations. So, we pick up on those cues. So it's really a community to share, what we have to share and learn from you also at the same time. Okay, so we got about 50% participation. Maybe we could continue with the poll some more, but I think the trends are pretty much evident, the way it's coming across. So clearly a large portion of the population, looking to get started, and this call is definitely the right place to make that start. And then, of course, a lot of other folks who really are at the initial stages, the response is about 35% to the first question. And again, not surprising because we've seen this, a lot of companies when they are migrating from the traditional case management that they would have used, it takes some time to evolve to all the functionality that ServiceNow offers. So it's really a journey. Yeah. Anything to add, my fellow panelists, to the poll results?
No, I think it's really great that we've got people that have responded to each question. So it seems like our attendees are kind of across the spectrum, which is really great. We've only got a few that are fairly advanced here. So it's interesting to see that everybody is still kind of in those stages of learning. So hopefully we can impart some of our wisdom and give you guys some tips and tricks and ideas for your next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks. We can remove the poll now. We can close it and let's move to the next slide. As Stacey shared, thank you all for providing us your inputs, and it's a journey in which we are all together. As you heard, we have another session coming up in a few weeks. So hopefully we'll talk and discuss more and help you get on with your journey. So moving on, as I shared that I'll use HR services and HR cases interchangeably. So when you get into configuring your HR services, these are the options. Those are available to you. And those of you who are familiar with the configuration, as you go on to the configuration screen, you see an option for fulfillment type in there. And there are more choices than these 4 listed in there. But the other, like advanced, etc., are really a combination of 1 or 2 of these. So broadly, there are these 4 options from a fulfillment perspective that you may choose to automate your services. Manual, I probably wouldn't talk much about it here, because that's really the simplest form of case management. But even then, it is automation, even though it is simplest automation, and it does serve a great purpose. And we've seen a lot of our customers utilize this very effectively, in terms of setting up a manual fulfillment type. So we'll talk a little bit more about the other ones as we move forward, the remaining 3. So let's move on to the next slide and talk about service activities.
Sure. And Sandeep, I just wanted to add too, I think what we see a lot in the implementations that, we've experienced is that a lot of those organizations start with those manual processes.
Yes.
And manual fulfillment. So if they're starting out with an MVP approach, or, they're just trying to get their feet wet, that's where they start. And then as they get more mature, as you get more of that data back around those manual services, that's when you can start that effort of reducing some of those efforts to tier 1 and 2, and increasing some of those self-service or tier 0 activities, or using automation to reduce some of those repeatable and manual steps. So that's where we see companies really start to embrace some of these different fulfillment types as they mature.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like we said, manual is really the starting point where you would set up your services. But if you have processes that are well defined, has a simple workflow logic associated with it, and includes a few actions, tasks, or activities to be undertaken to complete the cycle of that service, then you should use service activities to build that kind of NHS service. So it can either be a task that you assign to somebody. It could be an approval that you need from the employee's manager or somebody else within the organization hierarchy. Or you could even inbuild another child service within a service to utilize service activities. So the example that you see on your screen here is somewhere where an employee needs to provide certain kind of documents. So the first task assigned to employee is to upload the document. And then the manager has to approve the document. So that's the second task in there. And then finally, the agent needs to file away the document, either within ServiceNow's EDM module or swivel chair into another module. So that's how you configure simple service activities and a few tasks to take your case to your logical conclusion. Let's move on to the next one. And so service activities work well for simpler kind of workflows. But the moment you have a complex workflow or an event where it has got multiple activities in there, and those activities are sort of phased in a way that they may be periodic. Something happens first, then something happens after that, and there are various sub-segments or activity sets and activities within those activity sets that you need to configure. Then we recommend using the Lifecycle Events engine. The example on your screen is an onboarding Lifecycle Events case, which typically is the easiest example, but not the only use case for the Lifecycle Events engine. So it could be onboarding, offboarding, crossboarding, leave of absence, or maternity leave, anything that you feel requires a longer term period to complete the cycle of that service. And also at times you need to go beyond the HR team to get fulfillment across some of these areas. So you want to include your facilities team or your IT team. That's when the lifecycle engine comes into play, where you would group up these activities and then the case follows its logical flow. Can be for a month or 2 months or even a year long, how that case goes. So we can move on to the next slide. So just to sum it up, simpler activities go under service activities, more complex actions get classified under lifecycle events. And these two are really standardized workflows. Those are available to you when you select each of this fulfillment type within the ServiceNow HR service configuration. Flow Designer is sort of an added component because it gives you a lot more flexibility. So if you cannot solve your issue using the previous three options, manual, service activity, lifecycle events, then you sort of fall back on Flow Designer. And Flow Designer basically can take care of advanced trigger conditions. It can even update records, not only in your own ServiceNow system, but into a third-party system. So what you see on your screen here is how a workflow is configured. Not very difficult to do. Of course, you need some understanding of the system, but most of it, is logical, plain English, that what triggers the flow, and then what are the steps within the flow. So you need to ask for an approval. If it gets rejected, then what is the action? If it gets approved, then what is the action? And so on and so forth. You could create your whole flow logic in terms of how Flow Designer would create your service. So Flow Designer could be an independent service, the way you want to create it, or it could be part of any of your lifecycle events or service activities, the way you would like to utilize it. Just moving on to the next slide, please. So a simple comparison across all three, what I summed up for you, that service activities, and then you could probably read through some of these items here. Service activities really are simpler classification for a well-defined process, more complex environments over a longer period of time, you go for lifecycle events. And if you have more complex requirements that require more flexibility than what is offered between ServiceNow and lifecycle events, then you fall back on the Flow Designer. So that's really the options available to you. Let's move on. Yeah. Other than the fulfillment types that you would choose, there are certain other options that you can configure for yourselves. HR fulfillment instructions is one of those options. Now, this is, in our experience, a fairly underutilized option by a lot of organizations. They don't spend enough effort to sort of load in the fulfillment instructions. But if you are thinking of scaling up your operations, if you're thinking of standardizing service delivery, then fulfillment instructions become really, really important. You can even have fulfillment instructions change based on, if the same case is being held by a different team. For example, a case in Europe for tuition reimbursement may have different fulfillment instructions than a case in US for tuition reimbursement. So those kind of variations, that you need to do, or even specific checklists, etc., that you want to build in completing the case, can be incorporated to fulfillment instructions. So do try and include it as much as you can into your service delivery. I'll move on to the next slide. Sometimes we need documents as part of our HR service, and simple examples are an employee verification letter that an employee is looking for, or even signing an NDA or any kind of a declaration that you want. So ServiceNow provides you the option for document templates. You could load these templates into the system and then add them into a workflow that it gets kicked off either when the case is invoked from the portal or at the back end, by the agent. And then the document will follow its course in terms of pulling in information already available in the HR profile of the employee to populate some information. Then it can go to the employee to update whatever they want to update or to sign off the piece of the information. And then it could go through the next level, either to the manager for an approval or for added inputs. The agent can also view it again once it comes back to them if it's all complete. If not, they can send it back again for updates. So that's a simple way of automating any kind of documents that you may need within your organization. So clearly, something that is being used extensively by a lot of our customers, especially around onboarding, offboarding document requirements, and of course, the various kinds of verification letters that employees look for. Employee forms is another way to look at automation. And what employee forms does is that you need not always create a case. Sometimes you are just looking for an input from the employee to figure out whether you need to create a case around it, or that input itself is something that you collect and stored separately. So employee forms basically are assigned to the employee. Now, these could also be included into a case if you would like, but it's just a form of automation that's available. Or you could just assign it to an employee as a to-do task. So the example on your screen is where you are trying to collect some information around any intellectual property that your employee owns. So it's just assigned to the employee to say that, do you have anything to disclose around your personal intellectual property or invention disclosure? So the response is no, it just gets stored, no action required. But if the response is yes, then the system can trigger additional flows or a case, etc., which may be required to capture additional information. So a useful feature sometimes to think about, how to get input from the employees on specific items. Now moving on to the next one. Advanced work assignment. Now you anyway configure assignment rules when you configure an HR service, and they usually assign work to a specific group. But advanced work assignment, what it will do is it will really give you the next level ability to say that even if the work is going within certain groups, how do I assign the work based on their availability of the agent, based on their capacity, and based on their skills. So for example, if agent A has 10 cases and agent B has 20 cases, and you have activated advanced work assignment, the system will intelligently give the work to the agent who has 10 cases because the agent with 20 cases is probably already overloaded. Or there's a payroll case that has come in and you have specific people who have skills around, say, case management in Poland for payroll. So based on who has those skills, the system will assign the case to that individual. So something for you to think about if you're not using it already, advanced work assignment. And moving on to the last segment, bulk case creation. Again, nothing required to be configured here. This capability is available out of the box, and you could utilize it if you're not already using it. All you need to do is to pick up any of the services that you've already configured, and you want to create a bulk case around it. You can define the employee population for whom you want to create that case, and then create that case either as a parent case with all other cases as a subset, or as independent cases for those employees. So definitely a very useful capability when you want to generate cases at the back end, which have impact across multiple employees. So in conclusion of this segment, basically, when you start in terms of automation around your HR services, keep in mind that designing and managing your HR services is a continuous improvement process. So whatever you created today doesn't mean we can't revisit it 6 months down the road. You can, and you should keep continuing to improve it. So the starting point is to identify the typical pain points of feedback you're receiving from within the organization, that what can be automated, what they're looking at for automation perspective, identify those pain points, prioritize them, and then do not just get into automation without defining the end-to-end process. We strongly recommend this because process improvement precedes automation. We don't want to automate a bad process. So always look for improvement opportunities before you get into automation. And then obviously, when you're doing that automation also, our recommendation is to try and stick to out of box as much as possible. Do not over-engineer the process, that it creates a lot of technical debt and becomes difficult for you to maintain over a period of time. So simple recommendations as you think through automations, and of course in the demo, Ian will share some more in terms of how you can go about achieving it. Let me pass it back to you, Stacy, for the next segment.
Great, thanks, Sandeep. So that was some great information around automating cases. One of the other things that we really heard that you all were interested in understanding more about are the integrations that are available for HR. So we wanted to make sure to cover some of that information as well today, especially since integrations are a key part of that puzzle when you're designing these engaging experiences for your employees. Not only do you want to make sure that your agents are finding the right information to support your employees, but the integrations can also help ensure that your data is up to date. So that's going to give your employees confidence in the support that they're receiving from HR. The HCM integration is also typically the first step when you are doing your HR service delivery implementation. So we want to definitely highlight some of the capabilities that are available for you with your HCM integrations. In addition to that, there are other integrations available as well around e-signature, workforce management, background checks, tax withholding, and we have quite a few integrations available for learning management systems as well. These are pre-configured integrations that are available on the store. We won't be covering all of those other integrations, but we want to make sure that you are aware that those are available so that as you're doing some of your planning, you can make sure to check out some of the capabilities that come with those pre-configured integrations. When we're talking about the HCM integration, one of the questions I know I heard a lot, and I'm sure Ian and Sandeep got a lot too, is, what do we do in ServiceNow versus what do we do in our HCM system? So the key is these two work together really, really well. The system of record is generally your HCM. That's where your employee data is. So when all of those transactions are taking place around hiring, offboarding, or payroll are going to take place over in that HCM. But in order to really help your employees throughout their tenure at your organization, you're going to need some of that information that is housed over there to process some of the cases that are going to come across. So the system of engagement and interaction is really ServiceNow. That's where you're going to see some of that, the hand-holding that your employees are going to need, the information that is going to walk them through those processes is going to be over in ServiceNow. So what we want to know from you all is, where are you at as far as your implementations with your HCM system of record? Let's go ahead and launch that poll for everyone. Give everybody a second, find out if we're seeing kind of a similar spread to what we did with service automation, or if some of you all are a bit more advanced. All right, we've got about half of you that have taken the poll, so I'm going to go ahead and end that and share the results. So it looks like, again, we've got a spread of where you all are at as far as your maturity. It looks like we've got quite a few in the early planning stages. So we are going to share some information to help you through that stage. We're also going to share some information about some of the advanced configuration that is available as well. So hopefully some of you guys that have already done an implementation may be looking to do some of the next step. So as we move on, we want to make sure that those HCMs are helping build that foundation for the employee service delivery. The capabilities of enabled companies to leverage that employee data and increase the value of the solution. So doing that not only with HR, but across some of that omni-channel experience. And then as you get more mature, using it for some of the life cycle as well. So passing some of that information back that may be needed by other parts of the enterprise that your HCM doesn't support. So that's another critical piece to the integration with ServiceNow. And then some of the common use cases that we've seen that are really key to making these two systems kind of work together hand in hand is the ability to synchronize some of that important employee data, but also giving those employees the ability to look up information that they want to be able to have access to easily. And you want to also, as you're kind of introducing that employee experience, you want to have that one-stop shop for them to go to. So having it in ServiceNow makes it easy for the employees to know, oh, I need something, I go to ServiceNow. It also can help share some of that activity that needs to take place that the employees need to take action on. So some of those to-dos that they may have to complete, some of those requests that they have to fill out can also be shared between those two systems. And as you're going through and defining what does this integration look like, or as you're maybe expanding your integration, you want to clearly line out your goals. So what is needed? What pain points are you going to address? How is it going to improve work? What processes are included? And understanding those stakeholders that are involved and documenting those processes end to end, as well as where some of those data points occur along the process and what system has that information. Then you're going to define those requirements as well to understand what technologies and methods will be used. Are you going to use REST, SOAP? Is there encryption needed? Is there performance load concerns that you may have regarding the number of records? Those are things that you need to talk about during that requirement session. And then finally, that method, determining that integration method that we talked about. There are pre-configured store apps. We're going to show you some of those. The integration hub spokes, and then also the custom integrations that are available. Keep in mind, custom integrations are going to take longer to implement and are also going to require probably more maintenance from your teams, as well as making sure that for custom tables, you meet the licensing requirements. So you may have to extend some of the licensing that you need for additional tables. As well as your technology requirements, your technical requirements, you need to define security, error handling, data formats and quality, volumes, event triggers. That's going to be really key for your team as they set that up and go into the implementation phase. And a lot of organizations do pilots and proof of concepts, as well as end-to-end testing during this phase to make sure that the information they're expecting to see come over does come over correctly. We have some implementation guidance that we can share with you too, so we'll be posting some of those links in the chat. Before you get started with your integrations though, we strongly recommend that you use that Enterprise Service Management Integration Framework. This is going to install some of the common components that can be used to integrate with these third-party systems, such as your HCM or your LMS or other systems that you may choose to integrate with. So it's going to give you those key points for your integration sources, your tables for those to-dos to share that information, the to-dos widget so that it displays on the employee center, as well as those external data staging tables for storing data sent to the third-party systems from ServiceNow. And part of the pre-configured HCM integrations that are available on the store for SuccessFactors, as well as Oracle and Workday, we've got the profile and to-dos integration, which is what a lot of organizations start with. So it's your employee data, departments, jobs, positions. There's also advanced integrations available that are going to have that data on demand. So some of the information is going to include holiday calendars, payslip information, total rewards detail, There's also UI widgets that are available for those so that they display on the employee center. So again, making it that easy employee experience for your employees to get the information that they need. There's also some virtual agent topics to make it easy for them to self-serve some of that information, as well as record producers and services that can help expedite some of that request process back into HR. So some of the key takeaways we want you to have, define governance early, because planning and design are going to be really critical to making sure that you've got the right information that's being shared between the two systems. Take advantage of those pre-configured integrations. That's going to save you time and maintenance as you go forward. And then also really key, define roles and responsibilities for ongoing maintenance and support. Is it going to be IT that's handling this? Is it going to be HRIS? Are they going to work together? They need to communicate with you when there's upgrades or maintenance schedules or changes that are happening to those systems so that you can make sure that everything's going to flow efficiently for your employees. All right, I know we covered that quickly. I wanted to get to Ian's demo. So Ian, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you so that you can share how some of this works within the instances.
Okay, thanks, Stacey. Appreciate it. Okay, so I wanted to cover really briefly some of my favorite parts of automation in the system, and that's really going to be around the service automation and service configuration. So when we look at an HR service, we talked earlier about the different fulfillment types, whether it be manual, service activities, et cetera. And I thought it'd be nice to just show a brief demonstration of how that can work and how we can also leverage Flow Designer to provide some additional functionality that may not be available with those basic options. So this is the configuration screen for an HR service. And I won't get into a lot of the details of the full screen here, but I want to point out that the fulfillment type options are a drop down. And when you make a selection, you'll see different options become available. So right now we're in manual, but if I select service activity, now there's a related list that is added that allows us to do the actual activities. So service activities, when they are created, so they're generally tasks, but they can be an approval. We see here we also have the option for a child HR service, but I see most often are either approvals or tasks. But so these happen immediately when the case is created. So as soon as the case is generated, those activities are fired off and they'll be part of that service. So an example of a task, we can choose a task template, or we can so this allows us to reuse existing configurations, or I can create a new template. The types of things we can do on a task template are determine who the task would be assigned to, the type of task that's going to be created. Anything like the short description or description can be filled in. So really you can complete the task configuration through the task template, which can then be reused throughout the system. Whether it be an ad hoc task or automation such as this. So if I have so again, with the service activity, these tasks are created immediately. If I have more than one task, they will all be created at the same time. So we don't have as much control over how this works. You don't have as much conditional or logic ability. So when we talk about those kind of next steps, we talk the lifecycle events gives you some ability to use groupings of tasks and have different trigger points for those activities. But for the purpose of this conversation, we'll talk about Flow Designer and how that can be leveraged to provide some additional functionality. So this is an example, just a very, very simple flow. So initially, the flow is going to have a trigger condition, and this is where we can choose how we want to how the flow should how the flow should be kicked off. In this case, the service should be our demo activity service. and then I want the state to be work in progress. Other types of conditions that we often see here are things like region, like, okay, this only applies to America, or this only applies to certain types of workers, for example. So that can all be done through the condition builder very easily. If there are users, such as the subject person, we can expand subject person record and choose different criteria within here, such as the department or really any information that's available from that original case record. Once we have that established, that's the trigger, we'll have actions. Actions are can be a number of things. This is one of the most flexible parts of the system. It's really something that's exciting if you're into process improvement and automation. And this gives you so many options. So in this case, we have some things such as create a task or send an email. These are all standard available kind of delivered functions. So they don't require any coding. It's all kind of low code, so we can just click. You don't have to have any scripting involved. So if I wanted to send an email, for example, I have the ability to just as you can see, create an email body directly within this process, and that will be then sent off as part of this flow. Flows can have dependencies, so we can wait for actions to happen. We can wait for specific state changes, like I want to wait for, in this case, we're already in work in progress, but maybe we want to have something that triggers off when it goes into suspend state or some other value is provided. For this very, very simple example, we're just going to create a task. And in this case, we're using a task template also. We are going to create a employee input form. So this is going to be triggered off when that case gets to the work in progress state. Okay. So to show a little bit about what that would look like for the end user. So this is just what the actual task was like. It shows up under My Tasks in the Employee Center. And so this is a to-do item that would when you submit this, now that information gets sent back to the system so that it can be used for further processing purposes. But we can also have dependents, so that when that task is created, it can create another task, or it can update a value on the original parent case record. So one example would be, in an approval situation, it waits for the approval to happen. Once it's approved, it moves the state into ready. Or it may, if it's not approved, maybe it moves it to closed incomplete or something along those lines. So we have a lot of power and flexibility within Flow Designer and within the way that we can have dependencies within tasks. So I want to show a little bit about fulfillment instructions. We can type. Fulfillment instructions are, as Sandeep mentioned, a component that allows you to provide really whatever you'd like as far as text or knowledge articles to help your fulfillers. And the way we trigger these is going to be based on conditions on the parent case. So I can choose based on the HR service. And then I can also have other conditions here. Again, we talked about user location or country, things of that nature may be very simple examples. Or there may be, you may have a subtype or other data field that's collected on the record producer or the form that's filled out by the user. So all those can be used to drive the fulfillment instructions. And when you actually have a service, a case that's open as a fulfiller, they will appear in a tab under the case. So an example, we may have one on here, may not, but the tab will exist either way, and fulfillment instructions and checklists can be provided as part of the service. So here we see we have a tab called Fulfillment Instructions, which contains the description and links to knowledge articles to help the fulfiller. And so, and this is very, very quick, but I also want to kind of point out the store and talk about integrations. So within the ServiceNow store, we have a number of these pre-delivered or created we call spokes. These are basically part of Integration Hub, which allows the kind of like the complicated parts to be already done for you. So you don't have to do scripting. You don't have to write out 20 lines of code in order to connect into Workday, for example. So the Workday spoke is essentially kind of like the foundation component, which is what communicates between ServiceNow and Workday. But these other options here, such as the actual integration, is going to provide not just the spoke, but also really the use of that spoke. So it's like enabling that to be actually beneficial in your instance. So when you have a integration that you want to install, you can click Get. It's going to ask you what instance to apply to, and then you would go into the instance under your plugins, and you'll find the Workday integration spokes are available here to be installed like you would any other plugin in the system. And then that provides you with some of the, gives you some options in the menu for configuring that spoke and configuring that integration as a low-code configuration. So it's very, very quick. I wanted to make sure we at least could see a few things and have a few minutes left over for Q&A. So with that, I will hand it back over to you, Stacy, and we can look if there's any questions from the group.
Yeah, Mike, any questions from the Q&A that you might want to share really quick that might be helpful for everyone?
There was a lot of dialogue around the COE security. And just to give a high-level definition of what that is the COE security that we introduced back in Paris allows you to have a no-code solution for access restrictions. So essentially what happens is that the out-of-box access control list have a variable that will look at the configuration. So where there's a read or write ACL, it's going to look at those configurations to say, hey, have I met these, have I met this criteria? And if so, what are the groups that are able to see it? So just to give a high level of how that works, along with that, the last thing I'll say is that you have a read and you have a write COE security policy. So if you just want to read, you would just create a read. If it's a case to where you would want to give groups access to be able to write as well, you're essentially going to have two COE ACL security policies, one for read for those group or groups, one for write for those group or group. So there was a lot of dialogue around that. So I think it was appropriate to mention that as we conclude.
Great, thanks. That's good information, Mike. Appreciate that. And there's also some additional information that we'll include in the presentation appendix around some of the integrations as well, setting up ESM and some of the tips for the inbound and outbound setup. So wrapping up, again, appreciate you all being here. Some key takeaways. We've got some pre-configured integration spokes available for you to leverage. Also make sure that as you're automating some of those services, you want to leverage some of the capabilities and features that are available to you to avoid some of that technical debt. And continual improvement on both of these is going to be the name of the game. It's always building and adding and refining as you go. We've posted a lot of the links in the chat. There's also some implementation resource links that we'll include in the presentation as well. So please take a look at those once those are posted in the community. And then again, next month, we've got a meetup. So we'll have more of a conversation around some of these topics. So some of the things that we may have covered in last month's webinar and this month's webinar that you may have questions on, or you want to take a deeper look at or tell us about some of the things that some of the challenges you're experiencing, come and join the meetup and chat with us so we can kind of help answer some of those questions for you. And then sounds like we've got most of those questions answered in the Q&A. If there's more, feel free to reach out or join the meetup next month. But again, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you all in August for our session then. And special thanks to Ian and Sandeep as well, and Mike for your help answering those questions.
Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone.